together. 3, 2, 1.
All right. Well, welcome to the first episode of our Behind the BESS podcast, where we will bring the energy topics of the day, and where we aim to provide some expert insight into the complex, but also very exciting, otherwise we wouldn't be here, topics of power markets and grid operation. The topic of today is our negative energy prices, but before we get into that, let's maybe introduce ourselves. My name is Niels. I work at Bnewable as an energy market analyst, specifically also on trading and strategy. And here we have Damien and Matthias, but I'll let you introduce you yourself. I'll start with you, Damien. What do you do? Who are you? And how did you end up in the energy sector?
Thanks, Niels. So my name is Damien. I'm a flexibility trader at Bnewable. I started in the energy sector, I think 5 or 6 years ago, completely by chance. But I'm still here because I'm passionate.
All right. How about you, Matthias?
Yes, so Matthias Maschle, I also work at Bnewable, responsible of products and also regulatory. I did not end up in the industry of energy by chance, actually a long time ago, 2009 already, when I started working at Elia. Back then I first worked at Atlas Copco, and I wanted to change to an industry where you know that things were about to change. There would be a revolution, there would be a lot of changes, and that attracted me, and that's why...
You were afraid of boredom.
I was afraid of boredom.
All right. Disappointed or not?
Absolutely
So
not. No. I think it's
even a bit too much.
Yes.
Not too much. But the challenge is really accelerating right now, and that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think also here, my personal opinion here, we are really at the, let's say, the core of the energy transition, providing BESS and flexibility. So I think that's really interesting. Well, let's dive into the topic, right?
Yes.
Right. Well, negative power prices. I think most of you, or at least in the energy world, people have been hearing about this a lot. And if you look at 2024, which was really a record year in terms of negative power price occurrences, specifically on the day-ahead market, the expectation for 2025 was, okay, it will obliterate the record of 2024. And if we look at the spring and let's say the first half of the year, that scenario seemed to be materializing. But then the summer happened. And so let me start with you, Damien. What happened during the summer? And what did we expect? What happened actually?
Yeah, as you said, we expected a lot of negative prices, also quite extreme, so quite low in the negative. But actually, it turned out that the spring was worse than the summer, when usually we see more PV generation. So yeah, I would say everyone was on the expectation for a crazy summer based on the spring and also on the capacity that is increasing every year. But in the end, it was disappointing, not really, because of course it's better if the prices are not negative, but let's say it was way more chill than a lot of people expected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so when you say, it was way worse, or we expected it to be way worse than it was before, like why are you using the term worse? Like why is it a bad thing? Because it depends on from which perspective you look at, I assume.
Of course, yeah. Of course, for flexibility, negative prices, it's an opportunity. But I think if you look today at the volumes in Belgium, but also let's say in Europe, there is a lot more PV and renewables generation than there is flexibility. So flexibility, let's say mainly batteries. So yeah, it was worse for PV producers who see a lot of the energy they produce not remunerated, but even worse than that, they have to pay to inject. So that was really not a good news for the renewable generation sector, not a good sign for future investments. It's in that sense, it was worse. But of course, when you have a battery, when you have flexible consumption, well, negative prices are a good news. So it depends on which side you are.
Yeah, I see. And so what I was wondering is, okay, I mean, whether it's good or bad, it depends on where you're at. If you're on, like, say, the flexibility side, it's a good thing. If you're on the producing side, it's of course bad. You're basically paying for you to lose your electricity. So let's maybe take a step back and think really about, okay, how do negative prices actually occur, and why is it an exceptional thing? I mean, you don't see, let's say, negative prices in, I mean, for example, I don't know, when you buy yogurt in a store, or strawberries. So maybe, Matthias, your take, how does the price turn negative, and what problem does it signal?
Well, it's simply a matter of offer and demand. So it's the same with strawberries. In really the strawberry season, you see that prices are lower than outside of the season, because that's a question of offer and demand. There's not that many strawberries outside of the season, yet the demand remains the same, so prices increase. Now, the big difference there with the energy market is that still today you cannot store electricity in very big amounts. We don't have a lot of storage in our grid, so that means that when there's a lot of generation, a lot of electricity production at sunny moments, at windy moments, that exceed actually the demand, well, then you get a situation where you get so much abundance generation and no one to take it off from you. And that at that moment, these wind farms, these solar farms, they tend to sell their electricity at negative prices. Why do they do that? Because a lot of these power plants, they are still subsidized. So if they stop generating, they lose their certificates. So they don't have this incentive. So they say, I'm still going to generate, and I'm going to give the electricity with some money to someone to still get my subsidies. And that actually drives the prices negative.
Okay. So you think it's only a question of subsidies? Because, like, what we saw, I think, this summer is that, I mean, either from, let's say, spring to summer, a lot of people suddenly lost their subsidies and so started producing at negative prices, or something, or they just started, curtailing, or, like, optimizing their production, while before they were just losing money. Subsidies play a role, but I have the feeling the change we saw this summer was so sharp that it's not a lot of people losing their subsidies all at once. It has an effect slowly, but I think something has changed that is not only subsidies.
Yeah, there's of course also, you need to be able to curtail your generation, and if you don't have that many negative prices like in the past, people just built a system. It's not really steerable, because when you generate, either you consume it or you sell it on the grid. Why would you curtail it? The energy comes for free. But now, of course, with negative prices, with no one that wants to offtake this energy, well, then you need to change your installation. You need to make sure that you can reduce that power output. And probably, if you see now less negative prices, that's due to the fact that a lot of people changed their installation and made sure that they could curtail or modulate the power output of their installations.
I see.
That is certain, yes, that they flexibilize this.
Okay. And so, I mean, in the beginning of the year, at least in, I think starting from March, April, we really saw a lot of negative prices. And so early in the year, so there was a lot of communication publicly about this. We saw this in the papers. We saw this even in non-energy related journals. Do you think this summer is, let's say, mostly a market waking up, or, like you say, still, let's say, the share of non-subsidized PV and wind entering the market?
I think it's certainly a market woken up.
Okay.
From professional experience, talking to many of our clients, they all looked for solutions. How can I curtail my generation? Because today I'm just selling energy at negative prices. Usually the amount is not that much. It's not that I'm making huge losses, but still, if you can, with a simple modification, curtail that injection and make sure you don't sell excess electricity at negative prices, why wouldn't you do so? And there are many products now in the market, even suppliers that foresee the solution, that provide a solution. So I think a big part of the industry signed up for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I will be very curious to see next spring, so spring 2026, because quite funny, we had the same story in 2024. Spring a bit crazy, the grid operator in Belgium a bit, sending warnings and stuff. And then summer really more okay than anticipated. And then at that time, the explanation was just, it's Belgian weather, shitty weather. We
not good in July.
We were just lucky. And then 2025, 1 year later, spring again crazy, and then summer chill. So I'm really curious if we see that again in 2026, because if Matthias is right, the market has changed. People are starting to steer their generation to curtail. Why is it happening again in the spring and not in the summer? So I'm really curious to see if we see, in French we often say jamais deux sans trois, so never two without a third. I'm really curious to see if we have a third crazy spring in 2026. That would be funny, because then I would not really understand why it keeps coming.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would really like to get, let's say, your view on how you think this will evolve. But first, let me pose another question. Do you think? I mean, we see this a lot in. I mean, we've seen this, at least the market that we are most familiar with in Belgium, and then also a bit in Germany. But is this, let's say, a system need or a signal that is unique to Belgium and Germany, and let's say the Northern European markets, or is this something that we already see outside of that region or will see?
I think it's something you see in every country.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's everywhere that you also get a European market coupling. So countries influence each other, the prices tend to align in function also of the cross-border capacity. And it's everywhere that if it's sunny, certainly over big parts of Europe, that we saw these negative prices, negative prices occur.
Okay. And for example, I mean, countries like Spain are seeing a lot of negative prices also today, and especially this summer. Why did it, let's say, persist there when in Belgium and let's say Northern Europe we saw a decrease compared to 2024?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the Spanish market, but my feeling is that the Dutch market, and it's coming to Belgium and to Germany, is very dynamic, changing very fast. And you see that, for instance, in the Netherlands, with a lot of people reacting on the signal from the TSO, so much that
the imbalance price.
Yeah, the imbalance price, exactly. To an extent such that it sometimes creates issues because it's overreacting. So I have the feeling very dynamic market in the Netherlands. It's coming also to Belgium. We also see in Belgium, I think, a lot of actors in the energy sector and energy transition. So I don't know the situation in Spain. Maybe it's just it will come, or I have no idea. But certainly, I think the reason why they are disappearing quite fast in Belgium and in the Netherlands is the innovation and so many actors coming to the market and installing these steering optimization solutions.
Now also I also don't know the Spanish market that well in terms of subsidies, but also in terms of regulation. In some countries, and I think it's even the case in Germany, it's not allowed to throw away energy, to just curtail injection even when prices are negative, because you throw away green energy. And that's not allowed in many countries.
Really? Because I would, I mean, at least from what I heard, that also in Germany, for example, big wind farm operators, they will modulate their output depending on the expected price on the day-ahead market. Same with solar farms. So in that sense, they're already curtailing based on a market signal.
In Germany, they are for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they have weird rules really in Germany, and they lose their subsidies if the price is negative for more than X hours in a row. It used to be 4 or 6, now it's decreased to 1 for some. It's very very country specific, but yeah, they have certain rules that they lose their subsidies when there are X hours of negative prices, and then you see indeed the day-ahead price, kind of capping at zero. You see this decrease, and then a plateau at zero, and then increase it again when the wind or the sun is gone.
Anyhow, it should be forbidden.
Well, if you're a flex operator, that's what you would like, of course. But judging from a system perspective, it's kind of natural that you have to pay for electricity, right? It's a bit weird because if you have negative prices, to me it seems like a signal of excess. We have excess production.
At a certain moment in time, yes. But in the evening you see, from time to time, certainly towards the end of the summer, when the days get shorter, you see extreme price spikes.
Upward.
Yes, upwards, because very quickly you need to deliver additional energy when the sun goes down. It would be really cool if either, for example, consumption for heat, for example, is the heat is made during the day when this abundance of sun is there. That because now in the evening you need to start whatever power plant that you have to cover that need,
and possibly a very expensive one,
and a very polluting one.
That was actually an interesting development, I thought, because the expectation was really on the lower side, so negative prices. But in the end, at least beginning of July, what happened is like spikes in the other side, like very expensive prices in the evening. And at the moment, the kind of analysis that people told is that it was because of AC, so cooling, because the sun goes down, but your house, your building stays warm for a couple more hours because the walls are hot, and so the AC keeps running, but the sun is gone, and so you have suddenly a big demand and no renewables. So everything, as Matthias said, has to come from wind or conventional, and then we were expecting very negative prices, but we saw actually a couple of days beginning of July,
very positive ones,
very expensive prices, 400 euros per megawatt hour, something like that, way higher than we usually have for the rest of the year.
Yeah, quite an odd contradiction in a sense.
Yeah, and it's funny with this industry, with this market, that usually people expect one thing, and many times something else happens. Sometimes completely the opposite.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting in general, and I think that's true for most markets. As soon as, let's say, the expectation is voiced and people are aware of the expectation, then usually the market simply adapts.
Yeah.
So yeah, very interesting.
But it was actually, and let's see again in spring 2026 if the problem is solved, meaning that the market, has found solutions or not. But if it did, then it's really a good example of a market finding solutions by its own. There can be many critics of how offer and demand should be free and set the price and so on. In many cases, I think it shouldn't be completely a free market. But in this case, if it worked, that's actually impressive, and that's actually a good example of a market working and bringing positive impact.
Yeah. Well, I think the general topic is fascinating because you have on the one side the renewables rollout of PV and wind, and I think mostly PV is important for, let's say, the negative price topic, since it's highly, let's say, correlated. Decorrelated, with consumption. So you have very high production during the middle of the day, where there is, let's say, less consumption, when in the morning and in the evening you have a peak, and then the sun has gone down or is going down, or is still coming up. And so you have this really push. So PV really pushes price volatility. And on the other hand, you have flex players like ourselves, like Bnewable, stepping into that, let's say, hole in the market. So you're trying to provide a shift in production to really these peak consumption hours. And what my question is, to get back on what I said earlier, is okay, how do we expect this to evolve? Will we see let's say, more negative prices, meaning that the rollout of PV and the effect thereof will outpace the rollout of flexibility, or vice versa? What's your outlook on this?
I don't think we're going to see that many negative prices, because all the generation that's being rolled out right now is not subsidized anymore, and it will be ready to be curtailed. So it can be adapted, it will be included standard in the contracts, and PV installations, when their prices are negative, they will curtail.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, they will still, because there's more and more renewable generation, make sure that during the day there are no other conventional power plants running anymore. So they're going to be pushed out of the market, which makes that evening peak even a bigger problem, because even more generation needs to ramp up very quickly. Not that many assets that can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that for flexibility, that's where most of the value is going to lie, and that's going to be the next problem that will have to be tackled.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're of the opinion that flexibility in this case, or the effect of flexibility, will outpace the renewables rollout?
The negative prices, I think that's settled now. That's okay with curtailing.
So we won't see any anymore.
Never say never.
I'm pushing a bit.
I don't know the future, of course, but no, I think that most of the installations and the new installations now, they will be able to curtail, so I don't think it's going to happen that much now.
Okay. What's your take, Damien?
Yeah, I agree with Matthias, and one of the reasons also which we didn't mention so far, in Belgium we are phasing out the nuclear. In neighboring countries, in Germany, I think that's already done. So you also take away a big generation that was inflexible. So that was kind of worsening the negative prices issue, because on top of the PV that was producing a lot, you had this nuclear base generation that you could not stop. So that will lower the negative price issue. But again, coming back to what Matthias said, it's ramp up conventional additional that we'll need to find for the evening peak. So let's say when the sun goes down, in Belgium we started with 4 megawatts from nuclear, and then we had to ramp up to the 10 gigawatt or 11 gigawatt peak consumption. When the nuclear is not there anymore, you start from zero. So that's 4 additional gigawatts that need to come online quite fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like Matthias, that the stress will move from the noon hours, where we saw negative prices, to the evening peak.
Okay.
So that's going to be an interesting development to follow, already probably in this winter, but even more next summer.
And that's then again automatically going to reduce curtailment during the day, because we will need that energy during the day to fulfill that consumption, or the storage, the charging of the batteries at moment, to either reduce the peak in the evening or even deliver the energy at that moment. So this way, step by step, the curtailment will be less, so that we don't waste that much green renewable energy that comes for free.
Mm-hmm. And so
we actually should subsidize that.
More subsidies is what you're saying.
No, let the market work, but to prevent these extreme prices in the night, if you know that you can, you want to become greener and CO2 neutral, well, you can support the system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I see. And so actually, if we want to go to a fully, decarbonized system, we need flexibility. And so, just let's say your general take on what do these, let's say, negative prices mean for the energy transition in general? Maybe Damien, you can shed your light on this.
I think they were not a great signal, as I said in the intro, because it made PV parks, wind parks less profitable. So it makes the business case a bit under stress, which means you build less. So that's not great, I think.
Mm-hmm. I see. Following the argument of our dear friend Trump, says it's not profitable anymore to build solar.
I think it's still profitable,
mm-hmm.
But it's not just putting PV on a roof or in a field. it has to come probably with some, intelligence that it produces depending on the prices. It also maybe does not sell all its expected generation, but keeps some buffer to avoid imbalance, which can hurt sometimes. Maybe collocate it with a battery. So I think PV and renewables generation will remain profitable, but it will have to be a bit more smart, a bit more integrated, and in that sense, a bit more complex. But yeah, I think that was to be expected.
I think you also always need to combine it from now on with flexibility. Not maybe just standard. If you put now renewable generation, make sure that you combine it with some kind of storage. There can be BESS, but it can also be an e-boiler. A lot of industry needs heat. They want to electrify that. Put an e-boiler and a lot of PV.
But just from a grid connection perspective, it makes a lot of sense, because the big issue now, whether you want to increase your consumption, increase your generation, put a battery, is getting a grid connection. Because the network, the grid, it takes years, if not decades, to build high voltage lines. And so if you manage to get a grid connection for, let's say, a PV field, it will only be used at its max, a couple of hours or a couple of days a year. It makes a lot of sense to put a battery next to it that will, valorize that grid connection the rest of the time, and will also be able to store some of your PV generation to sell it more expensive. So yeah, from a lot of perspective, and in my mind, the grid connection scarcity is the main one. It makes a lot of sense to share grid connection, which means co-locating assets here.
Yes. And then you also just simply need less grid connection capacity.
Yes. I think anyways, any grid connection capacity that is available is taken or will be taken, so it will just be a matter, if you want to build something new, probably you will need to co-locate it. And also from grid cost perspective, it will make more and more sense, because all these investments into the grid, they cost, which means the grid operator charges you more, which means that every kilowatt hour you take from the grid or you sell to the grid has to be more profitable to cover those kind of fixed costs.
Yeah, makes sense.
So one challenge solves up to the next one.
Yes. Well, I remember. I take away from this. If we want to decarbonize, we need flexibility, and then the negative prices will disappear by themselves.
Yeah.
Well,
but
then
be wary of the price spikes in the evening.
Right. We'll keep that in mind.
And
Hopefully, the big operators. And the grid is congested.
One problem with
so we have plenty of problems we still need to solve. That's good. Yes. All right. To wrap up, let's maybe end with on a personal note. Damien, what are you working on this week, or what are you doing this weekend?
This weekend, I don't know. I'm going to a wedding. Working on this week.
Or next week.
This week I was busy with our algo to disaggregate the schedules that we want our batteries to perform. So as you know, at Bnewable, what we do is that we have a lot of batteries behind the meter, and we then aggregate them to have them as like one big battery that is big enough to have an impact on the market. And then we do in the market whatever is most profitable, but then we need to dispatch and tell to every single battery what they need to do in order to fulfill, what the big battery has committed to. And each of these battery has constraints that are linked to the site they are on and so on. So we have to consider all of this, and I was working on this algo this week.
Okay, cool. How about you, Matthias?
I'm putting up fights left and right. No, but my main
You're in the regulatory game.
Exactly. My main occupation at this moment, these weeks, is making sure, well, first of all, that we can build these batteries. They are a solution. We can avoid curtailment. We can reduce the peaks, solve congestion. But we need to be able to build them. And it's new, and we see that system operators still have a lot of difficulties in their methodologies to evaluate batteries and to give them grid connection capacity. So that is really a struggle. And on top of that, also, if you get a battery that you put behind the meter or decentral, getting market access in an intelligent way, independent from your supply contract, is very complex.
There are still some
There
are still some challenges left, and
so
you're trying to tackle this.
That's what I'm trying to solve.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thanks a lot for the discussion. I think it was very fruitful. It was very interesting, and yeah, thanks for being present for the first episode of Behind the BESS, and see you next time.
See you. Okay.